What's up, y'all? I'm Stephen Daniels, the founder of PureFreedom, a company I created because I believe that no one should have to live an addicted life. Thank you for tuning in to the PureFreedom podcast, where I teach people how to break free from porn addiction, the addicted lifestyle, and show them how to start living their best life. Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to the podcast today. This is episode 3 of the Pure Freedom podcast. And today I'm going to be talking to you guys about how to remain hopeful when you feel stuck in porn addiction. So one thing that I think can sometimes get people down is when they've felt like they've tried all these different things so that they can stay in recovery, but they just can't seem to break their habit. So today I'm going to give you some tips and tricks, things that I've done to make sure that I am always bouncing back from a setback, because setbacks happen, right? We're not perfect. There are times where we might get depressed. There are circumstances outside of ourselves that occur that we have no control over, that affect our mindset and our mentality. They trigger us, right? And those triggers can sometimes lead us into places that we never want to go back to. So today, that's what we're going to talk about. Now, the first thing I want to do is I want everybody to think about the earth and the sun. And just bear with me here. You know, every day the sun comes up and lights up the earth, right? And then the sun goes down and it gets dark again. One thing that we can always count on, no matter how dark it gets on earth, is that the sun will rise again. Then light will shine through the darkness. Being on the road to recovery can feel like that at times, because everyone doesn't just decide that, hey, I don't want to watch porn again, and all of a sudden they just stop. If that does happen, I'm sure that is rare. Most of the time it's a process, and there's a lot of things that you have to unpack and learn about yourself that you didn't know. So through that process, there are times where, you might feel really good and you're on a high horse, and, it's been 4 days, 5 days, a month go by. You haven't looked at porn, you haven't touched porn, you've dealt with all your triggers. And then there's days where it just feels like it's the darkest day on earth for you, right? And I've been there before, and that's why I'm speaking about this. So what I'm going to convey in this podcast is that even if that's where you're at right now, no matter how dark of a day you're having, right, no matter how low porn has got you down, just know that just like the sun cycles through it's rising and falling, and it cuts through the darkness. If you hold on to hope, and if you stay on the road to recovery, a light is going to shine into your life as well. Because the fact is, if you persevere, if you refuse to quit, if you remain hopeful, and this is a fact, you will be free. So I keep using that word hope. So let's talk about hope. What is hope? The Oxford definition of hope is a feeling of expectation and desire for a certain thing to happen. Some synonyms are an aspiration, a wish, an expectation, an ambition, an aim. Now, there was a time in my life, early in my recovery journey, where I didn't have hope. I wasn't hopeful. I didn't have a desire. I didn't have any wish to be free. I didn't expect to be free. My ambition was lacking. Why is that? So when I first started my recovery journey, I remember thinking that I was the only one in the world that was this addicted to pornography. I was married when things really began to shake me up, because I recognized that my behavior, my actions, my lies of omission, the things that I was doing was not only damaging myself, my relationship with God. It was also damaging my marriage. It was hurting my wife. So what I did was I started to look up some statistics to try to understand what what is really going on out here in the world. Am I the only one that is suffering like this? And I was kind of surprised by what I found. Now this is back in 2015-ish when I started looking up these statistics. But I found some new statistics from another study that was done more recently. I'm going to read them to you. All right. Did you know, based on the study that's been conducted by some researchers, and the links to the study is on our website at purefreedom.co/statistics. Well, the references are there, and the statistics are listed there if you care to go look at them. But the statistics say 50% of pastors regularly look at porn. 69% of American men view online porn each year. That's 6 out of 10 men in the USA. So if you're in the USA, for every 10 men you pass by in a day, you talk to at work, you see at church, you go to the restaurant and eat with, 6 of them have viewed porn this year. 42% of women in the USA watch porn within the last year. That's 4 out of 10. For every 10 women you pass by, you see at church, etc., 4 of them have watched porn. 93% of teen boys have been exposed to internet porn in some form. This is high school aged kids. I can attest to that. I was exposed to porn when I was in high school. 98% of porn use in the USA was via online websites. No more magazines. That stuff's old now. People are coming online. 69% of porn users viewed porn on their smartphones in the USA. This is the downside of technology. There's a dark side to technology and there's a good side to technology. 21% of men in the USA agree that porn is very bad for people. 39% of women in the USA agree that porn is very bad for people. 78% of participants in a study who reported watching porn in the last 24 hours reported unhappiness with their physical appearance. 51% likelihood of divorce or separation was found for a 20-year-old when pornography was introduced into a previously pornography-free relationship based on a 2018 study. And the final one, 11% of men reported some agreement with the statement, "I am addicted to pornography." Why am I sharing all this with you? Like I said, when I first started my journey, I felt alone. And the reason why I felt alone is because I wanted desperately to be free from porn addiction. But everywhere I turned, I could find no one that was willing to acknowledge that they are addicted as well. I ran into people that I later found out were addicted at the time when I asked them, and they had not much to say to me during that time in my life. See, this is the thing. You're not alone, okay? You might feel like you're alone. You might even be lonely right now. But if nobody else knows how you feel, I do. I know how you feel because I've been there. I've been right where you are. And these statistics say there's a lot of other people that know how you feel as well. They just aren't saying anything. They aren't reaching out to those that care about them and love them. They're not trying to get help like you are right now by listening to this podcast. So I had to learn by reaching out to multiple people that I'm not alone. And it took my own effort, honestly, for me to find those people. They didn't come to me. Like, I had a strategy I would use where when I would meet a guy and if it was at church or, it was somewhere else, and I felt like, we were good friends or we could be kindred spirits, I'd just say, hey, I'd ask him very gently, hey, do you watch pornography? And if he said, yeah, I said, hey, have you ever thought about being free, not watching it? If he said yes, then I'd connect with him and try to get him to join one of the accountability groups that I had. So So that's kind of my story about how I got started and like what it was like just trying to have some sort of hope that I wouldn't be alone in this journey. And I knew nothing about SAA groups. SAA is a great way for people to have some accountability and also to hear stories of other men. If you've never checked out SAA groups, look for those groups in your area. They're all over the country. But I just remember that feeling of hopelessness because I felt alone. I felt isolated. And the truth is, when you look at the statistics, you really aren't alone. It's just that people aren't visible. You can't see them. You can't see what's really going on in their lives. So now I want to tell you a story about how I was able to hold on to hope. So I remember waking up one day after a pornography binge, feeling like all hope was lost. I had been married for 2 years at this point, and I'm pretty sure my wife was working night shift, and I just indulged until the point where I was exhausted. But I still had to get up and go to work the next day. And on my way to work, I remember feeling this guilt and shame of what I had done the night before. It sank in a way it had never sank into me before. And I started to think all these negative thoughts. And one of the things I started to think was, man, like, will I ever be free of this addiction? And the honest answer I gave to myself at that time was, I don't know. And I genuinely felt that way. It was like, man, I don't even know if it's even possible to beat this porn habit. It was 2016, and it had been 6 years into my recovery journey. I was going to recovery groups that I was actually leading. I was reading books. I was connecting with my accountability partners when I got triggered. I was exercising. I was asking God to help me, but I was still relapsing quite frequently. And it honestly felt like I just couldn't win. After that, I got kind of down and depressed, and I was really feeling hopeless. And so, like, on the way to work in the following weeks, I started to convince myself that overcoming my porn addiction was impossible. And the thought of never beating porn just kept coming to me, and it kept like pushing this hopeless feeling into me. A lot of people would have given up after feeling that way. And honestly, I was tempted to, but I kept thinking about the man I wanted to become. I'm married. I kept thinking about my wife, how she supported me despite my struggles and the pain that she had to go through just dealing with my behavior. And I love my wife and I love myself too much to not try and at least fight. And so I recognized my behavior was hurting her, just as much as it was hurting me. And I didn't quite know how to heal, but I knew I had to keep trying different things because there's always a possibility that something could work. I knew that the negative feelings I had wouldn't last forever. I knew that sense of hopelessness that I felt wouldn't last forever. It's funny, like when I was a kid, my mom used to say something when she would punish me, right? If I got a spanking or anything like that, and I'd be, if I was crying and stuff like that, my mom would just say, it's a feeling, it'll pass. You feel bad now, but those feelings are going to go away. And she was right. And so because I held on to the possibility of a better future for me, a possibility of a better marriage for me, those feelings I had in that moment, that feeling of hopelessness, that feeling of never being able to get through this, it did pass. And I eventually found what worked for me. Now, I understand that there's a good chance that somebody listening to this is maybe feeling stuck and defeated. Maybe you've tried a recovery program in the past and it hasn't worked. Maybe you're starting to get on the road to recovery and you've had a few setbacks. Or maybe you're listening to this fresh off of watching porn the night before. I don't know. But what I do know is no matter where you are or where you're coming from, there's still hope for you. There is a future in your life that doesn't include porn addiction. I'm going to say that again. There is a future in your life that does not include porn addiction. And that's what you need to know. So really doesn't matter where you are in your recovery journey. There's a road to recovery for you. If you build healthy habits, if you refuse to give up, there's a road to recovery for you. I know this because after that day of feeling hopeless, I kept going. I kept building healthy habits. And then 2 years after feeling hopeless in 2016, I had a breakthrough moment of recovery in 2018 that led to 1 year sobriety for me. That was the longest period of sobriety I had had since the day I started my recovery journey. And then after that, I had 3 years of sobriety, and then 4. And now I'm approaching my 5th year sobriety this November. I did all this in a 10-year time span, right? And statistics show that it takes 2 to 5 years for someone to reach full sobriety from porn addiction. So I'll acknowledge there was a part of me that felt hopeless at times, but what I didn't do was let despair consume me. So you may be feeling down about your addiction. And if that's the case, I want you to know that your breakthrough moment is coming, but you have to keep believing that you will be free one day. You have to keep trying to practice healthy habits like setting boundaries, eating healthy foods, exercising on a regular basis. And you have to realize that you're not alone. You don't have to isolate yourself. There are literally, you heard statistics, literally millions of other people out there who are fighting every day to stay sober so that they can live their best life just like you. A lot of people may give up, but it doesn't have to be you. If you want to be free, you can, but you got to keep the spark alive. You got to keep hope alive. You got to keep believing. All it takes is a little bit of faith to persevere. I once read a book by a man named Viktor Frankl. Some of you may have heard of it. It's called Man's Search for Meaning. And I don't know if you guys know this or not, but Viktor Frankl's family was tortured and murdered by German Nazi soldiers during World War II. But Viktor survived. And when he spoke about his survival in the concentration camp, this is what he said. Everything can be taken from a man, but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. That's a quote by Viktor Frankl. So when we're walking the road to recovery, we have to choose to believe in a better future for ourselves, even if we can't see it, even if it seems unreasonable given our circumstances and our current habits. Remember that all things change with time. Building a mindset based on faith in the fact that you can overcome this addiction leads to positive change in your life and ultimately freedom. And remember this, when you're believing and you're visualizing this future self, and when you're hoping for that life that's free of porn addiction, remember that you're laying a foundation for your future self, right? You're laying the framework, you're laying the groundwork for your future self to walk on and stand on. So you have to continue to hope and you have to continue to believe. So, okay, that's all great, Stephen. Now, how does someone remain hopeful when stuck in a cycle of porn addiction? What are some practical guidelines or tips that you can offer us so that we can actually have that type of hope and belief that you're talking about? So I'm going to give that to you now. The first thing I would suggest is to read content that instills a sense of hope within you. I'm very careful, and even in my own life, about how much time I spend reading junk on the internet. And what do I mean by junk? Like the Reddit thread that serves no purpose other than just filling my brain with like mindless content for my own entertainment or even for political discourse. I'm very mindful about that. And the reason why is because if I'm feeding my mind things that aren't serving me in my recovery journey, it's not worth my time to do that, because me staying in recovery is the most important thing in my life because it affects every other area of my life. So for all you guys out there who love to spend time on Reddit, love to spend time on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, even YouTube, be mindful of how much time and what you're consuming. Look for content that's there to fill your mind up with positive things, positive affirmations, encouraging words, things that will help you be a more forgiving person, that help build you up personally and not tear you down or tear other people down. You know, you've also heard the saying, you are what you eat, right? Well, the same applies to your thought life. Mentally, you are what your mind consumes. So if you spend hours consuming junk, your mind is going to be filled up with junk. But if instead you spend hours filling your mind up with things that are educational, things that can help you have higher self-esteem, right? Things that can help you make more money, right? Your brain is going to feed off of that stuff instead. The next tip I have is for you to visualize where you'll be once you're completely sober. Visualization is so important when it comes to this journey. You have to be able to have some sort of picture and idea of where you want to go. And the reason why is because our brains tend to work better when they have a mental picture of what we want, right? You know, our brains are like prediction machines. So if your brain has a picture of where you're heading, it's going to start making moves so that you can move in that direction, right? Modern AI, artificial intelligence technology, is modeled after this aspect of the brain. And you see what it's capable of. So you got to start to imagine how much better you're going to feel once you're completely sober. Start imagining your life when you're free from addiction. Start telling yourself that I won't always be addicted. That's one thing that kept me going at times. Anytime I got down, anytime I relapsed, I would always tell myself, I'm not going to be addicted for the rest of my life. I'm not going to live my life like this. Now, in that moment, did I know that for sure? No. But I had faith and I believed and I hoped and I had a vision of where I wanted to be and the type of person I wanted to become. I had a vision of what my relationship with my wife was going to look like when porn was no longer in the picture, right? I had a vision of my own body, you know, the healthy habits I was going to build. So for me, that was a way for me to like trigger my brain to say, okay, Steven, you messed up, but that doesn't mean that it's over, right? So try to come up with a catchphrase if you can. You know, you could even use mine. I'm not going to be addicted the rest of my life. If that's what gets your brain in this isn't over mode, I'm fighting back, then do it. If not, find your own catchphrase. What is something that you can tell yourself that's going to make your brain say, hey, you still got this. You're still going to win. You might be down, but you're not out. The next thing is to join a support group. These groups exist for a reason. You know, I told you guys this before. You can't do this alone. You need help. You need support. You need people to understand you. And so that's what these groups are there for. I mentioned SAA earlier in the podcast. If you go to their website, you can find groups in your area and you can join them. You can start connecting with other people who are on the same journey and are there to encourage and support you. Another way to remain hopeful while you're on the road to recovery is talking to God. And the reason why this is important is because we have to surrender control, right? The serenity prayer says, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. It's saying a lot in a little bit of time, but essentially the core of this prayer is us realizing that in our own power, we cannot overcome this addiction. We have to look outside of ourselves. And talking to God will help you to do that. It will also increase your belief, because if you're putting your faith in something that's bigger than you, a power that is greater than yours, and you see the progress, it's going to help you believe more in what's possible for you. Another thing it does is allows us to let go of our ego, and it helps us to avoid isolation. When you know that God is there, you don't feel as alone because you know that he sees you. And lastly, I think it helps us be more accountable in regards to knowing what's morally right and wrong. See, porn corrupts our moral consciousness and redefines what we perceive as the right thing. And the reason why I know this is because there was a point in time where I didn't think porn was as bad as it was. A lot of people think like that. But when you break through your denial and you start to open up your mind to all the ways in which it has brought pain into your life, you realize just how terrible it is. So talking to God, putting your faith in God, reveals those things to you, can help reveal those things to you, because you see the depravity of man and you see the sinfulness of man. And porn is a great example of that. And not only do we see the sinfulness of man, but we also see that there are good things that come from God as well. And so knowing that good things come from God can help us to be hopeful about the good that's going to come to us in our future if we stick on the road to recovery and we make the right decisions day in and day out. And the last thing I do is I listen to motivational speakers. So I can't say enough about this. Recovery is all about personal development. And I talk about walking through these steps that I've gone through. I know as if it's some formulated process and everything, but the truth is it's all about becoming the best version of yourself. And motivational speakers can help you do that. There were days and weeks where I would play motivational talks like all day or every day of the week. And the reason why is because I had so much negativity coming into my mind that it's almost like I couldn't sit with just my thoughts. And hearing people speak life into me, speak positivity into me, helped to change the way my brain worked. It gave me inspiration and hope. I felt encouraged. Hearing people's stories and their resilience inspired me, because a lot of these guys who are motivational speakers, not all of them, but a lot of them have been through some really challenging times. And so when they talk a lot about perseverance, they talk a lot about resilience, and they talk a lot about overcoming obstacles. And that's exactly what we need to hear when we're in recovery, because we're trying to do all those things, right? And to be honest, I really feel like listening to motivational speakers really helped lead to that 1 year sobriety that I told you about. Because leading up to that, I was listening to that stuff like every day, and to me, it helped me to get to like just a breakthrough moment where something changed in me, and I was able to completely completely stick with some healthy habits on a consistent basis. It gave me a positive mindset and it helped me focus. And they also offer tools and strategies for your success. You know, the best way to learn is from somebody that's done it already. And if they may not have gone through the journey that you're going through, but they've gone through other journeys where they've had to learn how to be disciplined, right? And so they're sharing their experience with you, and you can learn from that. You know, if they understand, what it takes to build up a certain level of discipline to achieve greatness or success in their field, those same strategies apply to everybody. It's universal. It's not like because they're motivational speakers and, they talk about, how they became great or how they became disciplined, that you can't do that because you're dealing with recovery. It applies across the board. So those are my tips for how to remain hopeful when you're feeling stuck in the addictive cycle. Thanks for listening in to today's episode of the Pure Freedom Podcast. I hope today helped you in some way. If you like today's content or know of someone who needs to hear this, please share this episode. If you want to hear stories about people who broke free from porn addiction after years of being addicted, check out our blog at purefreedom.co. See you next time.